$22 million landed in my account overnight, and I did not put it there. I picked up the phone to send it back. I said my name. The line went dead quiet, not a pause, a held breath. Then a voice I did not know said 6 words that rearranged my life. "Ma'am, this is not a mistake." My hands went cold. My kitchen went small. Somewhere in a building I had never entered, someone had been waiting for me to call. Someone already knew who I was. Someone had chosen me. And whatever this was, it had already started days before I opened the app. Stay with me, because what I learned in the next 92 days will change the way you look at your own bank account tonight. Before I take you inside that kitchen, I need one thing from you. If you have ever wondered whether ordinary people like us can win against powerful people who think we cannot hit that subscribe button right now and turn the bell on. Smash that like button so this story reaches the next person who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell me the city you are listening from. I want to see how far this truth has traveled tonight. My name is Diana. Welcome back. Let us begin. My name is Claire Maddox, 43 years old, compliance officer at a regional insurance firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Modest 3-bedroom house on Pembroke Lane, a 7-year-old Honda Accord, mortgage paid on the 14th of every month without fail. A checking account that rarely held more than $4,000. I was not rich, I was not struggling, I was exactly the kind of person the financial system ignores. Ordinary, reliable, invisible. That last word matters. Remember it. They chose me because of it. I had been divorced 6 years from a man named Derek Maddox, a commercial real estate developer who had spent the last 3 years of our marriage constructing an elaborate second life I knew nothing about. I kept the house. I kept the debt. I kept a wariness of other people I wore like an old coat. I had 2 close friends, Nena Carver, who taught high school English and called me every Sunday. Paul Weston, a former colleague who had moved to Atlanta but texted more than anyone I knew. I had a cat named Booth. I went to the farmer's market on Saturdays. I was fine. I want you to hold that word. Fine, because on a Tuesday in October, fine ended. I opened the banking app the way I did every few days. A habit born of the divorce years when Derek had drained our joint account twice without telling me. I tapped through to my checking balance, and I stopped breathing. The number on the screen was $22,418,000. I laughed, a short, bewildered sound. I closed the app, I reopened it. The number was still there. Transaction history said wire transfer internal. No name, no reference, no sender. Deposited at 11:47 the night before while I was asleep. While someone somewhere was already watching to see what I would do next. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee going cold, and I did the thing an honest person is supposed to do. I called the bank at 8:02 in the morning. A representative named Marcus. I told him my name. I told him about the erroneous deposit. I read him the amount. And then it happened. The silence. Not the pause of someone typing. Not the hesitation of someone pulling a file. A long, particular silence with weight to it. The kind that tells you before a single word is spoken that something is wrong. And then Marcus said quietly, carefully, "Ma'am, that transfer is not an error." Something cold moved through my chest. I asked whose money it was. He would not answer. He transferred me to private banking. 7 rings, voicemail. I left my name, my account number, my phone number twice. I hung up and looked at Booth sitting in a wedge of morning light, watching me with the mild indifference of a creature who has never once worried about money. "This is fine," I told him. It was not fine. And here is what I want you to understand before I go any further. A bank employee had gone silent at the sound of my name, not at the amount, at my name. Which meant someone had already told him what to do when I called, which meant this had been arranged, which meant I was already inside it before I ever picked up the phone. If your stomach just dropped, hit that like button, because that was the moment I understood I was not the customer anymore. I was the target. I went to work that day. I sat through a department meeting about fourth quarter audit protocols and contributed nothing. 15 years in compliance. I knew what happened when large sums moved through accounts without documentation. I knew the Bank Secrecy Act. I knew the reporting thresholds. And I knew the category of explanation I kept pushing away and kept coming back to. What if the money had not been sent to the wrong account? What if it had been sent to exactly the right one? What if someone had decided my name should be attached to it? A shell, a layering scheme, a fall account. Ordinary invisible people selected precisely because they were ordinary and invisible. Because no one would look twice. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes that evening before I could go inside. Because if this was deliberate, then someone already knew my name, my bank, my account number, and they had enough institutional reach to move $22 million, and for reasons I could not yet see they had chosen me. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, booth in my lap, and I built a plan, not reckless, not dramatic, methodical, the way a compliance officer thinks. Step 1. Certified written notification to the bank. Step 2. File a preliminary inquiry with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Step 3. Hire an attorney, not tomorrow, today. Step 4. Document everything, every call, every message, every transaction backed up in 2 locations. And Step 5. The step that felt the most frightening. Find out who sent that money and why my name was already known before I called. I was at the office of Diane Reyes at 8:15 the next morning. Financial crimes attorney. 14th floor of a building on South Tryon Street. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said one word that turned the room cold. Insider. Someone inside that bank or with access to that bank had facilitated this. The silence when I gave my name meant my name had been flagged, not for fraud, for routing. Someone had expected me to call. Someone had left instructions about how to handle me. We filed the CFPB complaint at 9:22 that morning. Diane drafted a formal legal letter to Piedmont First National demanding origin disclosure. I mailed a certified letter of my own from the post office on Park Road that evening. Return receipt requested. Delivery confirmed at 11:47 the next morning. At 2:15 that afternoon my phone rang. A man named Richard Hale, Senior Vice President of Private Client Services. His voice was smooth and unhurried. The voice of a man who handled uncomfortable conversations by making them sound comfortable. He did not use the word error. He did not offer to reverse anything. He said he would very much like to sit down with me in person. He left a direct number. I forwarded the voicemail to Diane. 14 seconds later she replied, "Do not call him back. Do not meet with anyone from that bank without me present." That evening I sat at my computer and did the thing I should have done the moment I saw the deposit. I searched my ex-husband, Derek Maddox Capital Group. A federal civil investigation 2 years earlier, closed without charges, but in the PACER filings I found the name of a private equity firm, Heian Meridian LLC, large sums, unusual routing. And when I pulled the original formation documents from a 3-year-old SEC inquiry, I found a registered agent. A name I had heard 3 times in 6 years of marriage and never met. Sandra Reeve Maddox, Derek's sister. I sat back in my chair and felt the particular cold clarity of a woman who has just understood the shape of the thing she is inside. This was not random. I had been chosen, and the people who chose me were not strangers. If your hands just tightened, you already know what is coming, but you do not know how close it gets. Keep watching. Diane filed the FinCEN referral on a Thursday. Simultaneous notification to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of North Carolina. Her instruction to me was simple. Go to work. Behave normally. Change nothing. The most dangerous thing you can do right now is look like you are hiding, so I went to work. I reviewed compliance files. I ate lunch at my desk. I called Nena on my break and told her in the vague terms Diane, and I had agreed to that I was dealing with a financial matter more complicated than expected. Nena said that sounded ominous and offered to bring wine. I said maybe next week, And then 4 days later in the parking garage under my office building my phone rang. A 404 area code. Atlanta, I answered. Claire. The voice was a woman's, controlled, warm in a way that had been practiced. I think it is time we talked. I knew before she said her name. Sandra Maddox. She told me she had been trying to reach me through the bank, as though Piedmont First National were a mutual friend. She said there had been a miscommunication. She said this could be resolved simply and quietly if we could just have a conversation. Her tone suggested I was being irrational about a minor mix-up. Her tone was the most frightening part of the call. I told her any conversation would go through my attorney. I gave her Diane's name. There was a brief pause, then Sandra said, Claire. Attorneys make things messy. This does not need to be messy. And I said the sentence I had rehearsed in my kitchen the night before. Sandra. I filed a report with FinCEN 4 days ago. Whatever this was supposed to be, it is not quiet anymore. I ended the call. My hands were shaking. I sat in that parking garage for 3 minutes and breathed. 2 days later, Derek called. His number I recognized instantly. I had deleted it years ago and knew it anyway. The way you know the shape of a scar. I did not answer. He called twice more in the same hour. He left a voicemail. His voice was different from his sister's, pressurized, the voice of a man accustomed to people capitulating and surprised to find that I had not. He said the money was in the wrong place. His phrase. Careful and incriminating in its care. He said things could go very badly for me if federal investigators got the wrong idea. He said he would be in Charlotte on Friday, and on Friday he came. He rang my doorbell at 6:45 in the evening. I watched him through the front window without answering, his face older than I remembered. Set in the expression of a man who has never fully believed that other people mean what they say. He stood on my porch for 4 minutes. He rang twice more. He left. And what he did not know was that 2 days earlier on Diane's advice, I had installed a ring camera above the door. Every second of him standing there was now evidence. The following Monday, Diane called. Piedmont First National had received a federal subpoena for every record connected to account number 4412-7703-889. My account. A secondary subpoena had gone to Heian Meridian's banking institution in Delaware. The machine was moving. I had set it in motion, and it was moving. If you are still here with me, I need you to do one thing before we go into the room where they tried to buy me. Comment the word documented below, because that is the only reason I am still standing. And I want to know how many of you would have done the same. The offer arrived through Diane's office, a letter from a law firm in Atlanta called Whitmore & Galt. Diane recognized the name immediately, a firm that specialized in resolving sensitive financial matters, her phrase. With the particular inflection that meant, she was being professionally polite about something that was not polite at all. The letter proposed in careful legal language that in exchange for my signed withdrawal of every report, every complaint, and every referral filed with federal agencies, the sum of $2,500,000 would be transferred to an account of my choosing. The original $22 million would be recalled. All parties would sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. The letter used the word resolution 7 times, $2.5 million. To walk away, to disappear, to stop. I read it at Diane's conference table on a Wednesday morning, and I remember the specific quality of my feeling as I read it. Not temptation, not exactly. Something more like recognition. The way you recognize the shape of something you have been warned about. Here it is, the thing they do when they are frightened. They were frightened. I said it out loud. They are offering to buy my silence. Diane looked at me. She said they are offering to buy your cooperation with an ongoing federal investigation, which would make you liable for obstruction. They know that. This offer is not made in good faith. It is made to see if you are the kind of person who can be purchased. And if you are, they now have a document proving you accepted a payment to withdraw cooperation with federal authorities. I looked at the letter for a moment longer. Then I put it face down on the table. File it with the U.S. attorney, I said. Diane smiled. It was small and precise, already drafted the cover letter. Then everything went quiet. Sandra stopped calling. Derek's number did not appear on my phone. Whitmore and Galt sent nothing. It was the stillness of people regrouping. And I had been in compliance long enough to know that stillness of that kind is not peace. It is observation. They were watching to see if I would wobble. I did not wobble. But I was not made of stone, and I knew it. That was when I called Paul Weston, from my back porch, wrapped in a coat against the November cold. I told him everything. Not the vague version I had given Nena. Everything, the deposit, the bank, Sandra, Derek, the subpoenas, the offer. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Claire, are you keeping physical copies of everything?" It was such a Paul question. Not "Are you scared?" Not "What can I do?" "Is your documentation secure?" I told him yes. Diane had the originals. I had copies in a safety deposit box at a different bank. He said, "Good." Then he said, "Claire, you know you are going to win this, right?" I did not know that. I had hoped it, but I had not let myself say it or hear it. And the simple declaration of it from someone who knew me and meant it reached something I had been keeping carefully locked. "I do not know that," I said. He said, "I do. I have watched you work for 4 years. You are the most careful, thorough person I have ever met. And whatever they built it assuming you would either be compliant or invisible. They were wrong about you." Then Derek called from a Charlotte number I did not recognize. Clever, I thought. Or maybe just calculated. I answered because I did not know it was him. And when I heard his voice, the faint shock of it, familiar and wrong in the same breath, settled quickly into something harder. He wanted to meet. He wanted to talk. 2 days later, he came to Charlotte and he brought Sandra with him, and I agreed to sit across a conference table from both of them. The meeting happened in Diane's office. A paralegal present, recording running. They arrived together, Derek in a dark blazer, Sandra in a gray coat that probably cost more than my car payment. And what came next was the most sophisticated manipulation I have ever sat through in my life. Derek spoke first. He said he was sorry things had escalated. He wished they had been able to handle this as a family, and the word family landed with particular intention. A word aimed at the specific frequency of someone who had once believed herself to be part of his. Then Sandra spoke, and Sandra was the dangerous one. She said she understood I had been put in a difficult position. Language that neatly erased the fact that the position had been engineered. Then she shifted her tone toward something almost sisterly. Almost confiding, as though the two of us shared a private understanding that Derek could not fully appreciate. She said she knew what it was to be underestimated by men who thought they understood the situation better than they did. She said she admired people who protected themselves. She said she thought I was smart enough to recognize a genuine offer when one was being made. And then she said carefully that she had done some research on my situation, my mortgage balance, my monthly expenses, the limitations of a compliance officer's salary, and she hoped I understood what $22 million could mean for a woman in my circumstances. She was not making an offer, she was reminding me of my smallness, and I want you to hear what I said next, because it is the sentence that ended it. I looked at Sandra, then at Derek, and I said, "I understand what you are trying to do. You want me to feel that I am outmatched, that my life is too small to survive this. That the sensible thing is to step back and let it go and take something for my trouble. You built this on the assumption that I could be managed. I have had 6 years to understand what you are, Derek. I should have understood it faster, but I understand it now." Derek's expression shifted, the reasonableness dropped, not dramatically, cleanly. The way a mask falls when the person wearing it decides it is no longer useful. And he said, "Claire, you are not as protected as you think you are." The paralegal stood. "This meeting is over." They left. Sandra held the door open one extra beat and looked at me across the room with an expression I could not fully read. Not anger, not contempt, something between assessment and cold fury. As though she was memorizing me, cataloging me, deciding something about me the room would never hear. Then the door closed. I sat still for a long moment. My heart was beating harder than I wanted it to be. Derek's words playing on a loop. "You are not as protected as you think you are," and Sandra's last look playing alongside them. And I let them both play, and then I let them become fuel. If you have ever been told you were too small to fight back, write the word "watching" in the comments right now. Because that is what they were counting on, and that is what they were about to lose. The federal meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in January. Charlotte Field office of the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit on Woodlawn Road. Not a trial, not an arraignment, a structured interview, formal, recorded, documented. I was not the subject. I was the witness. Derek and Sandra Maddox had both been issued federal grand jury subpoenas. Neither had been given the option of declining. Their attorneys, two different firms now. Which meant they were no longer presenting a unified strategy, had negotiated the terms of their appearances. Everything that had happened since October would finally be in the same room at the same time. Diane had prepared me for 6 weeks, not for theatrics, for precision. "You tell the truth in the exact order it happened," she said. "You use the documents. You do not speculate. You do not editorialize. The case makes itself. Your job is to be the most credible witness in the room." I wore a dark navy blazer and flat shoes. I carried a folder built document by document over 3 months. Every call, every voicemail. Every letter, every pacer filing. The Ring camera footage of Derek on my porch, the voice memos, the Whitmore and Galt letter with its 7 uses of the word resolution. The SEC inquiry connecting Heian Meridian to Sandra Maddox, all of it indexed, dated, sequenced. It was not dramatic, it was architecture. Derek arrived with his attorney at 9:08. He did not look at me in the corridor. Sandra arrived separately at 9:14, her attorney walking close beside her, the posture of someone expecting the ground to move. The session began at 9:30. Special Agent Kamara Simmons, mid-40s, unhurried. The quiet authority of someone who had heard every version of every story and was only interested in the one that matched the documents. I gave my account first, in sequence, folder open. 12 questions, I answered 11 with documents, 1 from memory, 40 minutes. Then they brought Derek and Sandra in together. I was not in the room for that. Diane and I sat in the corridor, drinking bad coffee from a machine, while the last 3 months of my life reached their resolution behind a beige door I could not see through. And this is what Simmons told us afterward. This is the part I need you to hear carefully. The Delaware records showed that $22,418,000 had been wired from a Heian Meridian account to Piedmont First National on the evening of October 14th. The intended recipient, according to Heian's own internal emails subpoenaed from their server, was not Claire Maddox. It was a numbered LLC that Derek Maddox had established 3 months earlier and never capitalized. The routing number on file for that LLC at Piedmont First National was 1 digit off from my account number. 1 digit. The money had arrived in my account because of a clerical error. A real one after all, but not the kind that exonerated anyone, because the email correspondence also showed that Sandra Maddox had discovered the error within hours and had made the decision not to correct it, not to call the bank, not to initiate a recall, but to wait and see, to use my name, my account, my compliance background, as a potential buffer. If investigators came, there would be a real person attached to a real account with a real professional history, a fall address, a woman she had never met chosen because she was ordinary and invisible. When they were shown the correspondence in the interview room, their accounts diverged. Derek said Sandra had made the decision alone. Sandra said the LLC had been Derek's idea, and the error had been his firm's. Each blamed the other with the precision of 2 people who had rehearsed together and then under pressure abandoned the rehearsal. Simmons pressed them separately on the timeline. When had they each first learned of the misdirected wire? Their answers were incompatible by 4 days. One of them was lying about the sequence. Possibly both were. 3 follow-up questions. Their answers did not align on any of them. When Diane and I walked to the elevator at 12:17, I carried my folder under my arm, and I felt something I had not felt since October. The clean, uncomplicated feeling of a person who has told the truth and watched it hold. The grand jury indictments came down in late March, 4 months after the January interview. 6 months after the deposit, Derek Maddox indicted on 3 counts: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, obstruction of justice for the voicemail he had left threatening federal misunderstanding. Sandra Maddox indicted on 4 counts: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Filing a false corporate registration document in Delaware. Richard Hale, Senior Vice President of Private Client Services at Piedmont First National, indicted separately on 2 counts of conspiracy and 1 count of accessory after the fact. He had been the one who had put instructions on my account, not to reverse the transfer, but to route every inquiry call from account holder C. Maddox to his direct line. He had known about the misdirected funds within 12 hours of the deposit and had said nothing to regulators because Sandra Maddox had been a private client of the bank for 9 years. A relationship the institution was reluctant to disturb. That was the phrase, reluctant to disturb. The Office of the Controller of the Currency opened a formal supervisory examination of Piedmont First National. The bank entered a consent order within 40 days. Enhanced wire transfer controls. 18 months of federal oversight. A civil penalty of $4,300,000. They sent me a formal letter of apology for the handling of your inquiry in October, signed by the CEO. Diane framed it and hung it in her conference room. She said it was a reminder of what stonewalling looks like when the other side does not blink. The $22,418,000 was recalled from my account via a court-ordered reversal on November 19th, 5 weeks after it had arrived. My balance returned to $3,847, less than $94 I had spent on certified mail and a safety deposit box. Diane's fees were significant. I paid them. I did not regret $1. When I wrote the final check to her firm, she handed me a copy of the indictment documents with a yellow sticky note on the front that said simply, "You did this." I still have that note. I have never needed to look at it again, which is the best thing I can say about it. Derek Maddox was convicted on all 3 counts in September, 7 years in federal prison. His firm Maddox Capital Group had already collapsed. The building he had owned on South Boulevard in Charlotte sold at a loss in a court-supervised liquidation. I read about it in the Charlotte Business Journal in a 3-paragraph item on a Tuesday morning, and then I set the paper down and drank my coffee. Sandra Maddox went to trial in November and was convicted on 3 of 4 counts, 5 years. The judge noted in sentencing that her decision to allow the misdirected funds to remain in my account rather than correct the error, a decision she had made within hours, deliberately, while I was still asleep, had demonstrated a willingness to expose an innocent private individual to federal jeopardy for personal convenience. Richard Hale received 18 months and was permanently barred from working in the banking industry. The Justice Department press release named Derek and Sandra Maddox and Richard Hale. It described the scheme using a misdirected wire transfer and an unwitting account holder. In 2 clean sentences, the unwitting account holder was not named. I was a Charlotte resident whose account received the transfer and who promptly reported it to authorities. I read that phrase twice. Promptly reported it to authorities. That was all I had done. That was the whole of my heroism. I had not spent the money. I had not hidden it. I had not accepted the offer. I had not been managed. I had done the thing that is supposed to be obvious and turned out to be rare. I had simply told the truth from the first moment and kept telling it, through the silence on the phone, and the visit to my porch, and the conference room, and the offer with its 7 careful resolutions, and the meeting where Sandra had tried to make me see myself as small. Every time I had told the truth, and every time the truth had held, and it turned out that was enough. That the accumulation of ordinary honesty documented and delivered on time was a stronger structure than anything they had built. Paul called that evening. "I told you," he said. "You told me." I agreed. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a moment. Booth shifted in my lap, resettling with the proprietary comfort of a creature who has never doubted his place in a room. "Like myself," I said. "Like exactly myself. Nena came over on Saturday with champagne. Actual champagne, not sparkling wine. And a grocery bag with the ingredients for the pasta carbonara she knew I loved and never made for myself. We cooked it together in my kitchen and ate it at the table by the window. The winter light came through the glass at a low angle and lay across the table, and Booth sat in the chair between us pretending he was not interested in the pasta. And I thought, this is what you protect when you protect yourself. Not the money. I had never wanted the money. This, the table, the light, the friend, the cat, the ordinary evening earned back. That is what they had tried to take, and that is what I had refused to let them have. I kept the house on Pembroke Lane. I put a new roof on it in August. I painted the back porch a deep, dusty green I had seen in a magazine and thought about for longer than was rational. It looked exactly right. Diane referred me to 2 financial crimes attorneys building a compliance consulting practice. I signed on in March. I gave my notice at the insurance firm in April, professionally. With appropriate gratitude for 15 years of good employment. In June, I began working as a senior compliance consultant. The work was harder and more interesting and paid considerably more. It used everything I knew. Paul came to Charlotte for a weekend in the fall. We walked through Freedom Park while the leaves were turning. We drank good whiskey on the green porch in the evening while Booth patrolled the yard with his usual bureaucratic gravity. "Do you think about it a lot?" he asked. "Less than I thought I would," I said. And it was true. The events of that year had the quality of things fully processed, present when called, not intrusive. They had changed me in the direction of clarity, not damage. I knew what I was capable of in both directions, the fear and the steadiness. I had seen both, and they had turned out to coexist without contradiction. I learned 3 things that year. And I want to give them to you before I let you go, because they are not mine. They belong to anyone who is listening tonight and wondering whether the same thing could happen to them. The first. Ordinary people are chosen precisely because they seem like they will not fight back. If you have ever been called invisible, if you have ever been told your life is too small to matter, that is not a weakness they are seeing. That is the exact quality they are trying to use against you. Do not hand it to them. The second. The most powerful thing you can do in a system designed to confuse you is document everything and find someone who knows the rules better than the people breaking them. Paper is louder than power. Every certified mail receipt, every voicemail saved, every timestamp, every dated note, that is the architecture that holds when everything else is trying to shake you loose. The third. Silence offered money, and the suggestion that you are too small to win. These are not facts, they are tactics. When someone tries to buy your silence, they are telling you exactly how much your truth is worth to them, which means it is worth even more to you. I am sitting on my back porch as I tell you this. Booth is in my lap. The green paint has weathered a little in the corners, the way I hoped it would. The farmer's market opens in the morning. My life fits me now in a way it never did before that October, not because nothing difficult happened, but because difficult turned out to be survivable. And surviving it revealed something about me I might otherwise have spent another 20 years not knowing. So here is the question I want to leave you with tonight. The one I want you to answer in the comments below before you close this video. What would you have done? $22 million in your account. A voice on the phone telling you it is not a mistake. A man on your porch. A woman at a conference table telling you your life is too small to survive this. Would you have taken the $2.5 million and walked away? Would you have picked up the phone? Would you have kept the folder? Would you have signed your name to the truth on the first morning and held that signature through every silence that followed? Tell me. I read every comment. I want to know who you are. And if this story reached something in you tonight, I am asking you one last time. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. Smash that like button, because every single like puts this story in front of another ordinary invisible person who needs to hear that they are not as small as the world has told them they are. Share this video with the one person in your life who has ever been underestimated, and leave a comment below with the city you are listening from and one word. The word that describes the moment in this story where you felt something shift inside you. I will be reading. I will be there. This is Diana. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I will see you in the next story. Good night.